Welcome back to Africa This Morning. We are now on Media Watch as we take a look at the leading stories here in the dailies in Kenya. And before we start on the dailies, we'd want to give our congratulations to Lupita Nyong'o for her nomination of the Oscars. And I believe it's a confirmation that she's won for Best Supporting Actress. But that we'll be giving you a full detail on as we do our evaluation in the bulletin and also in the dailies here on Media Watch. We start off with the Standard, Raila's headache, burden of a healing ODM delivering credible polls and restoring hope of Orange supporters. That's the top stories in the Standard. At the very top of the paper, Kenya reflects a year after polls. That's expanded further on page 10 and 11. Today is March the 3rd. It was a year ago that we went to the polls, and now we have the opportunity to evaluate the government and to evaluate ourselves as a country and see how far we've come since then. Read this full story on page 10 and 11 of the Standard. Kenya awaits the good news. Of course, we've already indicated that Lupita has won. Read a full, it's actually 3 pages of Lupita's story here in the Standard, but here the Standard has it in page 2, 3, 4, and 5. At the very corner of the Standard, CJ declares judiciary won't bow. Read that full story in page 8. Moving from the top page to page 3, which is a beautiful breakdown of Lupita's story. 10 little known facts about Lupita Nyong'o. Here we have a little insert of what her parents call her. It's written here, her folks fondly call her a Momo, short for Amondi, which is just one of her six names. Talk about being special. A little bit more information right here. She got accepted at New York University, NYU, to study her Masters of Fine Arts in Dramatic Acting just after the first audition, and she turned it down, then cried. You need to read that full story also here on page 3. Moving on from page 3 to page 24, there's a lot more that you can read on education. Today we are going to be expecting the results of the KCAC to be released by the Cabinet Secretary of Education. On page 24, 32 officers to face panel as vetting resumes. Police Commissioner Bo says the third phase of the exercise, which kicks off today, will take 12 days to complete. Read that full story at the very top page of page 24. Keta alleges witch hunt in screening of police. A controversial Nandi Hills MP, Alfred Keter, is back at it again, but this time he has trained his guns. On the National Police Service Commission over the ongoing vetting service. You need to read the perspective of this MP on the column part of the Standard, page 24. Medics can help stem TB. We're touching on TB even as the day of commemorating, actually recognizing that TB is a challenge in the world is coming up very soon, and we'll be featuring that on Table Talk here on Africa This Morning. Read the story of the Standard on the column bottom part of page 24. Officers to continue manning traffic. Traffic personnel will remain at major junctions in Nairobi to control the flow of vehicles, despite a request by county government that they be withdrawn. Of course, this goes against what they had put forward earlier on last month to indicate that officers will be withdrawn, considering that they've invested a lot when it comes to the traffic lights and the facilities, the technological facilities that they've invested in transport. At the very last story right here, police gunned down 6 gangsters. That's a positive move by security officers. And we cannot move away from page 24 without touching on the picture. Law of the jungle. The public watches 2 water vendors square it out at Mwembe Kuku Road after they disagree on who should fill his jerrycan first. Moving on from page 24 to the back page of the Standard. Sports. Kenya's Wendy Anna Chieng left, and Mukamana Clementine of Rwanda fight for the ball during their Women's African Cup Championships qualifier at Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos yesterday. Here we have the Women's Football League. Read more on that expanded further in the Standard at the very top page of the Fever Pitch back page. Baldev Chegar secures a second rally victory in Machakos. That's expanded further on page 49. Kenya beat Egypt to grab Africa's slot to Wheelchair Tennis World Cup Finals. That's on page 46. There's a lot more that you can catch in the Standard to expand further on your information today on Monday. Daily Nation, Wako may lead team to rescue crisis hit ODM. Raila meets Nyanza MPs to in race to resolve stalemate as a Babu group demands snap party elections. That's on page 4. At the very bottom part here, we have now Westgate starts journey of recovery as key report unveiled. Read that further on page 2. At the very top part, touching on what we had discussed in the standard KCFC results to be released today. That's expanded further on page 6. And you can also stay tuned to our bulletin at 1 and at 9 to get the full story. Obama warns Putin, after Russia threatens to invade Ukraine as diplomatic crisis depends. That we've touched on in our bulletin. You can read further on that on page 33 of the Daily Nation. Here we have also a beautiful image of Lupita Nyong'o here, a 31-year-old actress who has been nominated for the Oscars. She's no longer nominated. She's made history in Kenya as having won the Oscars. You can read that on page 5 of the Daily Nation. Moving on to other stories, other leading stories in the Daily Nation, we have page 5, well done, Uhuru tells Lupita. 12 years a slave wins big at Independent Spirit Awards. Here we have a picture of the actress. And we have other stories also on page 5. Police launch hunt for city tycoon's son. Wiper rallies supporters for 2017. US paper praise Ooro's new book. We'll touch on that. A novel by Kenyan author has received glowing reviews by critics in the United States. You read more on that on page 5 of the Daily Nation. From page 5 to page 12, terrorists changed attack plans and plot. Ikrima, the mastermind behind a scale-down operation after intelligence services tracked him down. And here we'll pull a little bit on the data insert of the story. 2012, the year when NIS reported Al-Shabaab were planning Mumbai-style attacks. The puzzle right here. Some escaped, insist experts. Of course, we had, during this particular harrowing episode in the country, we had those who were within the Westgate Mall indicating that some of those who were alleged attackers had escaped while the victims are also being released. You read the full story on that on page 12. At the very column side of page 21 of the Daily Nation, masterminds target youth to execute terror attacks. We've had episodes in Mombasa County where Musajid Mosque has been identified as a place where terror initiatives are actually being engaged using the youth, and that's something that you need to read on and get the full story on the column part of page 21. Unanswered questions in House team report. Deputy News Editor Patrick Mayoyo looks at the unanswered questions in the report by the Joint Committee on Administration and National Security and Defense and Foreign Relations on the inquiry on the Westgate terror attack. You need to read that full story at your own leisure. And at the very bottom part of page 21, unanswered questions in House team report. Read that full elaboration by Deputy News Editor Patrick Mayoyo as he looks at the unanswered questions in the report by the Joint Committee on Administration and National Security and Defense and Foreign Relations, an inquiry into the Westgate terror attack. From page 21 to the back page of the Daily Nation, Mutunga takes lawmakers head on. No amount of threats will deter courts from delivering justice to Kenyans, Chief Justice tells MPs and senators. Read that full story on the back page of the Daily Nation. To the Kenya Premier League football at the very top part of the Daily Nation, Gor and Leopards face elimination from CAF competitions after weekend's first leg defeats. Read that full story on page 54. At the very column part, rallying, controversy rocks Machakos KCB event. Drivers withdraw over safety concerns for participants and spectators. That's on page 51. There's a lot more that you can catch on the Daily Nation. Top leading story in the Star. Did Raila organize ODM chaos? We witnessed that, and our reporters covered the event on the 28th of February when you had the ODM doing the national elections at Kasarani. Here we have one of those causing chaos. Kicking up a storm, a man disrupts the ODM elections at Safaricom Stadium in Kasarani during the party's national democratic elections on Friday. Read the full story on page 6. At the very column part of the Star, cutting funds from judiciary will hurt the public, says Mutunga. Counties irregularly appoint ambassadors. The Transitional Authority has warned county governments against violating the Constitution in undertaking functions that are not yet devolved. You need to read that full story. Also on page 6, the editorial piece by Ngunjiri Wambugu, ODM cannot use and discard youth at will. Read that perspective on page 24. From the top page to page 3, IEBC voting to take 2 days. Once voting to take 2 days in 2017, that would be a bit tricky, but then you need to read the full story and get to know why they actually want to propose that. It's on page 3 of the Star. Embu's MCA's wife in road accident. Read that story on the column part. ODM faulted over Friday poll chaos. Read also that story in the column part of page 3. At the very bottom, stop Bensouda from appealing my accusal. Ruto tells ICC. You need to read that at the very bottom part of the Star. Treasury ministers allow DPP to recruit more staff. Read that full story on page 3. From page 3 to page 13 of the Star, there's a lot more when it comes to the breakdown of the counties. We're going to touch on the coast right now. Kwale representatives vote against MP's bid to control fund. Here we have another tussle of power play. A motion opposing the decision by MPs to take over the management of 3.4 billion fund set aside for marginalized areas has been passed by the Kwale County Assembly. Read that story at the very top part of page 13. Devolution Ministry messed health staff pay union indicates. Here the Ministry of Devolution tampered with health workers' payroll registers before transferring them to the counties. The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentist Union has indicated here. Read the full story and get to know what's happening when it comes to our service providers in the health sector on page 13, the center part. ODM party will overcome challenges, says Balala. Former ODM Pentagon member Najib Balala has said the party will overcome the challenge it experienced on Friday during the National Delegates Conference. Of course, this is an interesting take from a former member of the party who is now in the ruling party. At the very column part that has briefs of the county, headmaster faces arrest. You need to read that story. MPs vow to stop land grabbing. You need to read that story also. And politicians slam US over the gay campaign. A politician has told off the US over threats to withdraw support from Uganda after President Museveni signed in the anti-gay law. Of course, here we are seeing that the African countries want to give their say when it comes to supporting their peer, but get the full story from the voice of the people from Kwale on page 13. To the back page of the Nairobi Star, the flying Sing. Here we are talking of the rally. Baldev retains the title in KCB Machakos rally as he wins first race of the season. Read the full story on the back page of the Star. Hockey. Levana and Kianda, Moi and Pangani sail to school's hockey semis. That's on the school championships in hockey. That's on page 47. Athletics also is covered on the back page. Draws dominate Premier League weekend matches. That's on the bottom part of the Star newspaper. To the people, hard questions Raila now faces when it comes to his party. Here we have a breakdown of some of the key questions the opposition party leader might be facing. It's broken down further on page 4. And here we have discontent bubbling in the Orange Party as we have some of the significant members pictured here. We have Orengo fallen out, Zani chosen out, Mungaro different script, and Midiwo disgruntled. And here we have the party leader pictured here in a very beautiful image. But get to know what's happening in the opposition camp and some of the challenges they're facing and whether they'll overcome it on page 4 of the People newspaper. At the very top part, taking stock challenges facing the country a year after the last general election, which brought Jubilee to power. That's on page 2. Koinange linked JM to secret military training in Zambia. Read that feature story on page 10 and 11. Will not be intimidated, Mutunga tells politicians. Read the full story also on page 4. From the top page to page 3, a beautiful story here. Hilarious talent made in the streets. Stand-up comedian Maina Kimaru has carved a unique niche for himself in Mombasa comedy industry. Read the full feature story on page 3 of the People newspaper. To the back page of the People, Leopards caged. That's on page 52. Read that on the Kenya Premier League. City come from behind to clinch Capital One title over Sunderland. That's on page 55. That's on the English Premier League. Chaga claims Machakos rally in tough duel. Defending championship, Baldev Singh, navigated by Ravi Soni in a Mitsubishi EVOX, racked up his maiden win in the season as the dust finally settled at the Machakos rally yesterday. Read the full story on page 55. Also, USIU plaque orange from the summit. This is touching on the National Women Hockey League. Read that on page 53. There's a lot more that you can catch in the dailies here in Kenya. Read that and get yourself informed for the week. That was our take on Media Watch. Join us shortly as we take a look at the leading stories in business with Charity Kinay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining Ebru Africa. My name is Zante Keita from Ebru News, Senegal. The Jali deal with many topics concerning the blocking review about the electoral court, the differences between the government and the opposition on the voting of the local election for the next June 2004. We start by Popular newspaper. Popular notice on his side, and it will return to President Macky Sall to arbitrate dispute opposition after the failure of the mediation of the collective organization of civil society for the election. Soleil, the jolly of the national news. The presidential party, the opposition, and the non-aligned decided to resume work last Friday in the Commission for the Review of the Electoral Code. This follows the withdrawal of the opposition as far as the division of the non-aligned was against the position of the presidential party regarding the case. Other newspapers are interested in the emergency Senegal plan, the new repository of the public policy in Senegal. The quotidian headlines with the President Macky Sall, our country has just passed an important milestone, said the President of the National Assembly, Moustapha Niasse. Moustapha Niasse is referring to the result of the 2014 adversary group for the Senegal, a round table with Ghana, who helped the Senegalese side to garner new commitments of its technical and financial partners, sustaining a maturing Senegal, a peaceful economic, social, and cultural revolution. Moustapha Niasse is pronounced following the adversary group with the Senegal achieved results. That was the main titles developed by the Senegalese newspapers. Thank you for attending. See you.